Derby Wars, racing's biggest contest site, is now even bigger with more than 200 games every day. Check out Survivor, Derby Wars' hottest new game. It's fun, easy to play, and for just $4 you could win $1,000. Just pick a horse to finish first, second, or third and advance to the next race. With daily payouts and games starting every hour, you'll see why fans are racing to play Survivor.
Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsey, and as always, I have the great pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Schiffman. How are you today, Matt?
I'm great, Brian. Happy New Year to you and to all of our HorseCenter fans.
Happy New Year, Matt. We're filming on the 3rd, January the 3rd, which means we're only 25 days away from the world's richest race, the new Pegasus World Cup Invitational, $12 million on the line, Matt. Let's say we look at the field, how it looks now. I guess we're talking first and foremost of the rematch, a rematch, of course, of an excellent Breeders' Cup Classic that featured the upset of California Chrome by the up-and-coming superstar Arrogate. Matt, these are the top two. Anybody else on your list?
Well, there are others on the list, Brian. Are there any others on my list that I think are going to beat those two? I don't think so, Brian, but we are all looking forward to the rematch and the possibilities of a different racetrack and a different distance and whether that can be a factor in the outcome of the race.
Matt, I have a feeling it will be a factor of the race. Now, of course, I thought California Chrome was going to beat Arrogate 10 furlongs at Santa Anita in the Classic. But I have a feeling the 9 furlong distance is a little bit better for California Chrome than Arrogate. Arrogate is obviously a top-notch horse. What he's done in his last two starts are pretty incredible. But those both came at 10 furlongs. I wonder if he's a horse that just gets better and better, grinding out type of horse as the distance increases. Maybe 1.5 miles will be his best distance yet if he ever gets to run it. But 9 furlongs, I kind of give the edge to California Chrome here. Maybe a little bit more of a tactical horse.
Yeah, Brian, that makes perfect sense. But again, like you said, we just have those two big races and his easier races, his allowance races before for Arrogate. So I'm not convinced that he's not going to show us something special again, going the 1.1 miles.
That's for sure, Matt. My idea basically is a hunch that distance only improves Arrogate. He could be as good as at 1 mile or 1.16 or 1.1 miles of the Pegasus World Cup. Now, looking back at that big Breeders' Cup Classic, some people got on Victor Espinoza after the race for the ride. My question is, 9 furlongs, would that have changed things at all in your mind?
Well, Brian, I think the thing that's interesting about the Pegasus and the 9 furlongs is that obviously Victor's going to be aware of what happened the last time. But, I think there's a horse or two, particularly the horse Neolithic in here, who loves Gulfstream Park, loves to go to the lead. And that's going to keep California Chrome in the race, running hard, maybe more than he had to in the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Well, I don't think California Chrome necessarily needs the lead. He had the lead in the Classic, but I don't know that's his best game. I think if he has a horse in front of him, that only helps California Chrome's chances in my eyes. Neolithic wasn't a speed horse when I saw him earlier in the year. He's shown good speed, of course, as he's stretched out recently, stalking Stick Stately Dude in the Discovery, and then that allowance win where he really didn't beat much, an allowance race, but he did it on the front end at Gulfstream Park. I don't know if Neolithic has the kind of speed to take the lead, but I guess if the Starlight Runner wants the lead, California Chrome and Arrogate probably are just fine in letting Neolithic get the lead. Now, Matt, the horse that I think is the most interesting so far, right now we have about 8 confirmed. We're talking about California Chrome, Arrogate, Shaman Ghost, Keen Ice, Aragon, the Argentinian horse from the McInvale team, War Story, Neolithic we mentioned, and Semper Fortis from Renham and O'Neill. Of the other 6, after the big 2, after the huge favorites, after the soon-to-be champions, California Chrome and Arrogate. The horse that interests me the most is Shaman Ghost. Now, Shaman Ghost is a 5-year-old now, but he's still relatively lightly raced. Matt, am I crazy to think that Shaman Ghost could still be on the improve?
I think he could possibly still be a horse that can show us more. What is that going to mean in the Pegasus? Does he have is he the most likely horse to finish third or possibly even second if Chrome or Arrogate isn't on their A game?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But I think if anybody comes close to the top two, unlike the Breeders' Cup Classic, where they were just a pole ahead of the third horse, who, by the way, was Keen Ice, who might very well be the third choice in here, I think it is Shaman Ghost. Shaman Ghost only, remember, Matt, he only ran 5 times last year. Included in those were wins, nice wins in the Brooklyn and the Woodward. In fact, in the Brooklyn, of course, it was a much longer race, but Shaman Ghost has shown the ability to at least stay in the picture. He doesn't need to be way, way out of it. Keen Ice did that last time, went second to Stanford. But I think Shaman Ghost is a horse more on the upswing than perhaps Keen Ice. Now, Keen Ice has run well since coming to the Pletcher barn. He hasn't won a race. He hasn't won a race since the Travers a year and a half ago. Are you thinking that Keen Ice is a horse that could make some noise in the Pegasus?
I'm thinking that Keen Ice is definitely my horse, maybe my third place horse. I know a lot of people love to knock Keen Ice and the fact that he hasn't won a race since, and that's all true. But I think the trainer change to Pletcher, whether it's at Gulfstream or a little bit down the line, I think we might see some victories from Keen Ice this year. You know, the thing about Gulfstream is it's probably not the right kind of racetrack for the old Keen Ice. We wouldn't expect Keen Ice to do well at the distance and at the kind of track that Gulfstream is, which tends to not particularly play well to those late running lug up kind of horses. But Pletcher has a way of putting speed into his runners. So maybe Keen Ice is the third place horse.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be on that bandwagon, Matt, and that's of course a similar finish to the Breeders' Cup Classic, especially if there's a gap between the top two to the third. But I think Shaman Ghost could do better than that. Now, another horse we should mention, of course, is Aragon. Aragon was the winner of 10 of 20 in Argentina, Group 1 winner several times over there. Most of his races came at about a mile, so he's used to running this kind of middle distance. Very little speed, though. Aragon was a real come-from-behind horse in Argentina. Now, his connections recently told me that they are very much looking at a prep race. So they're kind of under the gun as far as timing. They just got him out of quarantine a few days ago, and now Aragon looks to possibly run on the 14th of January next week in a mile stake at Gulfstream. Can we expect Aragon to do well in this prep? Can we expect Aragon to be any sort of threat come January 28th?
Like you said, Brian, he is a legitimate deep closer. And again, you know, it's coming from Argentina and the kind of competition. I'd be surprised if he is the third placed horse, going to make a late run and maybe get to fourth or fifth, but everybody needs to have a horse in the gate to pick up the $250,000 that they get for having a runner.
Yeah, one thing's for sure, McIngvale wanted to run a horse after being one of the early investors in the $1 million. Now, there have been a history of really good South American horses coming over. I'm thinking about the great mares, Pasiana and Bayacoa, Matt Boy going back years ago down in Florida, Invasor more recently, and of course Candy Ride. There's a lot of Argentina horses or South American horses. Most of them, by the way, are from Argentina, like Aragon, who have come over and done big things. Of course, there's been tons of horses that have come from South America and have not been able to run at our highest level. This is going to be a tough spot for Aragon, but maybe he's kind of the real deal. And that real deal might put him in a class with Shaman Ghost or horses like Keen Ice. So we'll see. The prep could tell us something, but it's a big thing to ask. And speaking of big things to ask, Matt, more from War Story. War Story's been thrown in a lot of big races the last couple of years. He did win the Queens County for Fun last year, a few weeks ago last year. Is he moving forward, or is he just once again thrown into a race that he can't compete?
Probably is a tough race for him. I think they found the right kind of level in his last victory. But hey, the Lute Stable people, they like to run the horse, and there's nothing wrong with that. Let me just jump back to Aragon for one more second, Brian. Looking at some of the replays, I think the connections might do a little rain dance, because I think I saw some replays where that horse just flew from behind in the mud, so which may not be to the liking of some others.
Well, they actually told me that he would prefer a fast track, but he has done pretty well in muddy races down there already. So yeah, it looks like at the very least he can handle it, Matt, which is interesting. And now we're going to talk about, let's mention Semper Fortis too, who I've listed as 8th of the 8 here. It seems like a throw-in, a decent enough Californian horse who is running in Grade 3 races out there and competing at least, but no Nyquist for these connections, so Semper Fortis is the horse. I can't see him finishing in the top half of the race, quite honestly.
I can't either. He got crushed in the Malibu in his last start. Another horse that likes to make a late run. It doesn't look good for that one.
Doesn't look good for that one. It did look good for Midnight Storm in the San Pasquale on Sunday. Now, of course, Arrogate was supposed to be the big horse in the San Pasquale. Bob Baffert and the team decided to scratch Arrogate out of the Grade 2 San Pasquale, which would have been his prep, his bridge from the Breeders' Cup Classic to the Pegasus World Cup, due to a wet racing surface. Fair enough. This horse is worth a lot of money. We don't know if he likes a wet track. Maybe it was an issue where they're thinking better safe than sorry with such a valuable horse. Does that worry you at all moving to the to the Pegasus World Cup on two fronts, Matt? One is, what if it does come up wet, like you said? And number two, now he doesn't have a prep between the 10 Furlong Breeders' Cup Classic at the beginning of November, almost 3 months later to the Pegasus World Cup.
Well, I'm probably less concerned about the length between the races, because Baffert's already done that with the horse. He had a lot of time off between the Travers and the Breeders' Cup Classic, so why not do it again? Why do you have to worry about running a lot of races, Brian, when you're potentially going to pick up $7 million from a victory here, and then maybe you're thinking about another layoff and going to Dubai for the Dubai World Cup for a $10 million purse? So really, Brian, why do I have to run a lot?
Well, you don't have to run a lot, Matt. I don't. For me, it's not a question of, and I guess this is the new style of training and owning good horses these days, where you can kind of pick your spots and only run in the biggest races. But on the other hand, there's reason you prep a horse. And is Arrogate, especially coming out of a 10 furlong race, is Arrogate going to be at his very best without the prep? Maybe he is. Maybe the answer is yes. He did go a similar gap from the Travers to the Breeders' Cup Classic, like you mentioned. But dropping in distance at a track like Gulfstream, I wonder if that prep would have served him well. Who knows now? We'll have to see what happens. Certainly his scratch did help Midnight Storm, who, if you've noticed, has won 5 graded stakes in his last 6 starts. His only loss was a competitive third in the Breeders' Cup Mile on turf. He's taken to dirt. He's taken to wet tracks. It's clear right now, early January of 2017, that Midnight Storm is one of the best horses in America. I would put Connect, the horse we saw win a Tough Cigar Mile a little over a month ago at Aqueduct, into that same grouping as one of the best horses in America. Both of their connections have decided not to run in the Pegasus World Cup. Matt, what do you think of that decision?
Well, if you take a look at the field and you look at the possibilities that maybe they're being realistic and thinking, I'm running for third place. Well, so why not wait and look to win the $1 million, win the big cap, or win some of the more some races with big purses later on in the year, instead of tangling with Chrome and Arrogate. And of course, earlier when I was talking about Arrogate, I agree with you, Brian. there's so much money out there, but I don't agree with. I think it's risky. I think it puts some yellow flags up for me that Arrogate isn't having a prep race. Baffert all along was hemming and hawing about the San Pascal, so it didn't surprise me that they didn't run in there. But I don't like the trend. I'd love to see the horse running more, but he's worth so much and these purses are so big. I get it, I guess.
Kudos, all of what you're saying, Matt, I agree with, and kudos to California Chrome for kind of dancing every dance since he was a 2-year-old, other than a forced layoff there last year, or 2015, I should say. California Chrome really does thrive on racing, and it's nice to see a horse like that running over and over again. I like California Chrome a little bit better. Maybe we see, I don't know, Gunrunner, Stanford, other horses. We still have 4 spots to fill. Gunrunner would be interesting. It doesn't seem like at this late date that anything's happening with him. I could see him being the 3rd choice if he went. I don't mind those other horses. Connect, Midnight Storm, not running in this race. It's a strange time of year. Don't forget, handicap horses aren't used to showing their best in January of the year. So for a lot of these horses, there will be big money on the table throughout the year. And you're right, they would have been the 3rd choice at best in here. So it makes sense to skip this one. Midnight Storm and Connect are the 2 big ones I'm talking about. Speaking of big ones, Matt, yesterday I think you were at the Jerome Stakes, and we saw a very big win from a shipper from Maryland.
Yeah, it was an 11 and fraction length victory. So a horse that very, very highly regarded by his trainer, Cathal Lynch from Laurel, who said he's had a lot of 2-year-olds in his career. And this horse stands head and shoulders above any young horse that he's trained before, and ran the kind of race that they expected. Handled the distance easily. I'm going to need to see more later on from El Arib, because the track was really wet. The track was deep and soupy, and he loved it. I don't really know if anybody else in the field liked the racetrack at all, and they all seem to struggle.
Yeah, El Arib has been highly regarded. He was purchased for a fair amount of change early last year. So El Arib is a horse that we've kind of known about a little bit in Maryland. And if you look at his 2nd race, where he got left at the gate and came flying, and then these big wins at Laurel, the last 2 races, and then yesterday 11.25 in the Jerome. I made a kind of a tongue-in-cheek comment that if the Kentucky Derby was the same timing as the Pegasus World Cup, El Arib would be one of the horses to beat. And actually, I do kind of believe that. I think he is, at least to some extent, for real. I do worry that maybe 10 furlongs might be a little bit farther than he wants, but we'll have to see. But I don't think for any stretch of the imagination we've seen the last of El Arib. I think he could be one of the forces on New York's trail to the Triple Crown this year, to the Kentucky Derby. Matt, one of the best races, I wanted to show this on HorseCenter because I thought it was one of the best races, one of the best finishes of the year, actually. And I'm talking about the American Oaks, the only Grade 1 race last weekend. That was Saturday at Santa Anita. There was a rainstorm going on. It looked like a wide open race on paper, and it couldn't have been any more of a thrilling finish as they came down to the wire.
Yeah, they've been getting a lot of rain in Southern California. They don't like that there. But yeah, it was really, really wet. The turf was really soggy, but the horse got out on the lead and stayed out on the lead, and they came after her, and it was a really, really terrific finish.
Great finish. Decked Out, of course, won the race. Now, Decked Out is a DeSormo horse, trained by Keith DeSormo, ridden by Kent DeSormo. She hadn't won in a series of races, although she had been close in several since a wet turf course back this spring at Santa Anita. So it appears she likes her turf a little bit, with a little bit of give. Great finish. She got up literally in the last jump. It was too close to call. We had to go to the photo. Sassy Little Lila was the horse that tried to go wire to wire. Lightly raced filly coming from the East Coast for trainer Brad Cox. She looks like one to keep an eye on in the future. She ran her heart out to just miss in that one. All right, Matt, we got some interesting races coming this weekend. I think the most interesting to me are both at Santa Anita, involving newly turned 3-year-olds. We have the Sham Stakes on Saturday, the Santa Ynez on Sunday, and both of them have a couple of big names, or at least highly regarded names. The Santa Ynez on Sunday features Shane's Girlfriend, who won the Delta Downs Princess by a pole, against Unique Bella. And Unique Bella is a daughter of Tappet and Unrivaled Belle. She is breeding out the wazoo, Matt. She's trained by Jerry Hollendorfer. She won her second start by 10 lengths. She's a Pennsylvania bred, but bred to the hilt. So I'm excited about that Santa Ynez, Shane's Girlfriend, and Unique Bella. But Gormley and American Anthem in the Sham on Saturday should tell us something about California's trail to the Kentucky Derby as well.
Yep, another weekend and 10 more points on the Derby trail. We got Gormley in there, and it'll be interesting to see how that horse does, and a highly regarded Baffert in there too.
Yeah, Baffert's got his Bodemeister. That's American Anthem. We've been hearing a lot about American Anthem in recent weeks, that Baffert likes this one. Just barely won his debut, but it was an impressive win against a big field. And then Gormley, of course, was the horse who won the front runner in only his second Lifetime Stakes. He failed in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I think he finished 7th, Matt, that day, Matt. But he's another horse with a lot of potential, a Malibu Moon for John Sheriff. So we'll look forward to these races on the weekend. Thank you so much, folks, for watching us once again. We always enjoy bringing the show to you. Thank you also to our sponsor, the best contest site out there. That's Derby Wars. Parting shots from you, Mr. Schiffman.
It's great to be going to the track already. I'm setting a goal. I'm going to the racetrack at least once every month, Brian, and thinking about what new racetracks I'll get to go to this year.
Some new racetracks. Well, I have Ascot on my radar this year, Matt, so I'll be there in June. I'm going to try to go more than once a month. I'm going to try to go 29 times a month. And on that note, folks, we'll see you next week on HorseCenter. Thanks for watching.